Pushbutton War by Joseph P. Martino. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by FNH. Pushbutton War by Joseph P. Martino. In one place, a descendant of the Vikings rode a ship such as Leif never dreamed of. From another, one of the descendants of Caesars, and here an Apache rode a steed such as never roamed the plains. But they were warriors all. The hatch swung open, admitting a blast of Arctic air, and a man clad in a heavy, fur-lined parka. He quickly closed the hatch and turned to the man in the pilot's couch. "Okay, Harry, I'll take over now. Anything to report?"
"The heading gyro in the autopilot is still drifting. Did you write it up for maintenance?"
"Yeah. They said that to replace it, they'd have to put the whole ship in the hangar, and it's full now with ships going through periodic inspection. I guess we'll have to wait. They can't just give us another ship, either. With the hangar so full, we must be pretty close to the absolute minimum for ships on the line and ready to fly."
"Okay, let me check out with the tower and she'll be all yours."
He thumbed the intercom button and spoke into the mic.
"RI 276 to tower. Major Lightfoot going off watch."
When the tower acknowledged, he began to disconnect himself from the ship. With smooth, experienced motions, he disconnected the mic cable, the oxygen hose, air pressure hose, cooling air hose, electrical heating cable, and dehumidifier hose which connected his flying suit to the ship. He donned the parka and gloves his relief had worn, and stepped through the hatch into the gantry crane elevator. Even through the heavy parka, the cold air had a bite to it. As the elevator descended, he glanced to the south, knowing as he did so that there would be nothing to see. The sun had set on November the 17th, and was not due up for 3 more weeks. At noon there would be a faint glow on the horizon, as the sun gave a reminder of its existence, but now, at 4 in the morning, there was nothing. As he stepped off the elevator, the ground crew prepared to roll the gantry crane away from the ship. He opened the door of the waiting personnel carrier and swung aboard. The inevitable cry of "Close that door!" greeted him as he entered. He brushed the parka hood back from his head and sank into the first empty seat. The heater struggled valiantly with the Arctic cold to keep the interior of the personnel carrier at a tolerable temperature, but it never seemed to be able to do much with the floor. He propped his feet on the footrest of the seat ahead of him, spoke to the other occupant of the seat.
"Hi, Mike."
"Hi, Harry. Say, what's your watch schedule now?"
"I've got 4 hours off, back on for 4, then 16 off. Why?"
"Well, a few of us are getting up a friendly little game before we go back on watch. I thought you might want to join us."
"Well,
Come on now, what's your excuse this time for not playing cards?"
To start with, I'm scheduled for a half-hour in the simulator and another half-hour in the procedural trainer. Then, if I finish the exam in my correspondence course, I can get it on this week's mail plane. If I don't get it in the mail now, I'll have to wait until next week."
"All right, I'll let you off this time. How's the course coming?"
"This is the final exam. If I pass, I'll have 42 more credits to go before I have my degree in animal husbandry."
"What on earth do you want a degree like that?"
"I keep telling you, when I retire, I'm going back to Oklahoma and raise horses. If I got into all the card games you try to organize, I'll retire with neither the knowledge to run a horse ranch nor the money to start one."
"But why raise horses? Cabbages, I can see. Tomatoes, yes, but why horses?"
"Partly that's because there's always a market for them, so I'll have a fair amount of business to keep me eating regularly. But mostly because I like horses. I practically grew up in the saddle. By the time I was old enough to do much riding, Dad had his own ranch, and I helped earn my keep by working for him. Under those circumstances, I just naturally learned to like horses."
"Guess I never thought of it like that. I was a city boy myself. The only horses I ever saw were the ones the cops rode. I didn't get much chance to become familiar with the beasts."
"Well, you don't know what you've missed. It's just impossible to describe what it's like to use a high-spirited and well-trained horse in your daily work. The horse almost gets to sense what you want him to do next. You don't have to direct his every move. Just a word or two and a touch with your heel or a pressure of a knee against his side, and he's got the idea. A well-trained horse is perfectly capable of cutting a particular cow out of a herd without any instruction beyond showing him which one you want."
"It's too bad the Army did away with the cavalry. Sounds like you belong there, not in the Air Force."
"No, because if there's anything I like better than riding a good horse, it's flying a fast and responsive airplane. I've been flying fighters for almost 17 years now, and I'll be quite happy to keep flying them as long as they'll let me." When I can't fly fighters anymore, then I'll go back to horses. And as much as I like horses, I hope that's going to be a long time yet."
"You must hate this assignment, then. How come I never hear you complain about it?"
"The only reason I don't complain about this assignment is that I volunteered for it, and I've been kicking myself ever since. When I heard about the rocket interceptors, I was really excited. Imagine a plane fast enough to catch up with an invading ballistic missile and shoot it down. I decided this was for me and jumped at the assignment. They sounded like the hot fighter planes to end all hot fighter planes. And what do I find? They're so expensive to fly that we don't get any training missions. I've been up in one just once, and that was my familiarization flight when I got into this assignment last year. And then it was only a ride in the second seat of that two-seater version they use for checking out new pilots. I just lay there through the whole flight. As far as I could see, the pilot didn't do much more. He just watched things while the autopilot did all the work."
"Well, don't take it too hard. You might get some flights."
"That's true. They do mistake a meteor for a missile now and then. But that only happens 2 or 3 times a year. That's not enough. I want some regular flying. I haven't got any flying time in me for more than a year. The nearest I come to flying is my time in the procedural trainer to teach me what buttons to push, and in the simulator to give me the feel of what happens when I push the buttons."
"That's okay. They still give you flying pay."
"I know, but that's not what I'm after.
I fly because I love flying. I use the flying pay just to keep up the extra premiums the insurance companies keep insisting so long as I indulge my passion for fighter planes. I guess about the only way you could get any regular flying on this job would be for a war to come along."
"That's about it. We'd fly just as often as they could recover our ships and send us back up here for another launch. And that would go on until the economy on both sides broke down so far they couldn't afford to send any more missiles for us to chase, or boosters to send us up after them. No thanks. I don't want to fly that badly. I like civilization."
"In the meantime, then, you ought to enjoy it here. Where else can you spend most of your working hours lying flat on your back on the most comfortable couch science can devise?"
"That's the trouble. Just lying there where you can't read, write, talk, or listen. Might be okay for a hermit, but I'd rather fly fighter planes. Here's the trainer building. I've got to get out."
7 o'clock. Harry Lightfoot licked the flap of the envelope, sealed it shut, stuck some stamps on the front, and scrawled "Airmail" under the stamps. He dropped the letter into the stateside slot. The exam hadn't been so bad. What did they think he was, anyway, a city slicker who had never seen a live cow in his life? He ambled into the off-duty pilot's lounge. He had an hour to kill before going on watch, and this was as good a place as any to kill it. The lounge was almost empty. Most of the pilots must have been asleep. They couldn't all be in Mike's game. He leaned over a low table in the center of the room and started sorting through the stack of magazines. "Looking for anything in particular, Harry?" He turned to face the speaker.
"No, just going through these fugitives from a dentist's office to see if there's anything I haven't read yet. I can't figure out where all the new magazines go. The ones in here always seem to be exactly 2 months old."
"Here's this month's Western Stories. I just finished it. It had some pretty good stories in it."
"No, thanks. The wrong side always wins in that one."
"The wrong... Oh, I forgot. I guess they don't write stories where your side wins."
"It's not really a question of my side. My tribe gave up the practice of tribal life and tribal customs over 50 years ago. I had the same education in a public school as any other American child. I read the same newspapers, watched the same TV shows as anyone else. My Apache ancestry means as little to me as the nationality of his immigrant ancestors means to the average American. I certainly don't consider myself to be part of a nation still at war with the pale faces."
"Then what's wrong with the Western Stories where the United States cavalry wins?"
"That's a different thing entirely. Some of the earliest memories I have are of listening to my grandfather tell me about how he and his friends fought against the horse soldiers when he was a young man. I imagine he put more romance than historical accuracy into his stories. After all, he was telling an eager kid about the adventures he'd had over 50 years before. But at any rate, he definitely fixed my emotions on the side of the Indians and against the United States cavalry, and the fact that culturally I'm descended from the cavalry rather than from the Apache Indians doesn't change my emotions any."
"I imagine that would have a strong effect on you. These stories are really cheering at the death of some of your grandfather's friends."
"Oh, it's worse than that. In a lot of hack-written stories, the Indians are just convenient targets for the hero to shoot at, while the author gets on with the story. These stories are bad enough, but the worst are the ones where the Indians are depicted as brutal savages with no redeeming virtues. My grandfather had an elaborate code of honor which governed his conduct in battle.